Drama 15 has brought me new information regarding diversity through the medium of stories. As is the case for all people, I have only ever been one race, so I haven't had personal experiences or conversations as anything other than a white person. And for all people, this limits our ability to relate and empathize to some degree. This class, however, has given me stories that are portrayals of the lives of people who are different from myself. So for me, the biggest effect of this class is that it has increased my understanding of diverse groups of people and improved my ability to empathize. In this final presentation, I have done my best to address the problems of racial and economic inequality that are at the heart of A Raisin in the Sun, and I have tried to connect America specifically to the rest of the world through the use of immigration and its relation to the economy, and the economy's relation to racism. In doing so, I have also touched on some of the racial issues that appear in plays like The Migrant Farm Worker's Son. While I have not offered a solution to many of these problems that I have brought up, I have attempted to demonstrate the deeper understanding that I have gained over the course of this class. The American system of racism and economic inequality are directly connected, and in turn connected to globalization and the response of isolationism. Let's start with racism and economic inequality in America. As we all know, America has a long history of racism, and that has often affected public policy, which has led to some of the economic division we have today, creating the following statistics. Average unemployment rate for college-educated African Americans in 2015 was 4.1%, while the average unemployment rate for whites who had not finished college was 4%. In 2011, 73% of white households owned their home, while 45% of African Americans owned theirs and 47% of Hispanics owned theirs. It is thought that policies such as the Social Security Act of 1935 have contributed to these statistics by intentionally excluding African Americans and Latinos from the program by excluding agricultural, domestic, and railroad workers. Occupations where workers of color were concentrated. During this same time, the Housing Act of 1934 was passed, which redlined entire African American neighborhoods, marking them as bad credit risks and discouraging lending in these areas, even though at this time African Americans were still being excluded from white neighborhoods, and therefore had no alternatives. This redlining was not outlawed until 1968. Policies like these have affected generations of African Americans and relegated them to lower rates of home ownership and neighborhoods of declining property value. Not everyone is aware of the historical causes of wealth inequality, and in time racism takes on a cyclical nature, i.e. racially motivated policies create and sustain economic inequality, and eventually economic inequality contributes to public racial opinions. For instance, the stereotypical ideas that African Americans or Latinos that are in poverty are in that situation due to their lower intelligence levels or poor work ethics. Essentially a blame the victim attitude. Racial attitudes and opinions are greatly influenced by policy and the economy, especially if there are negative effects for upper and middle class families. People will seek a solution to their problems by blaming people outside of the groups they identify with. It could be African Americans for abusing welfare services, or immigrants, particularly Latinos, for taking jobs, or Middle Eastern asylum seekers and refugees for being terrorists. When middle-class citizens of any country feel a squeeze on their wallets, sense a change in the surrounding culture, or are told they are becoming a minority, they will seek to place blame, and it often falls on people who they see as foreigners or outsiders. The them that is challenging the us. Which is where globalization comes into play. One of the big current effects of globalization is the rise in isolationist beliefs and policies, such as Brexit. But it doesn't only affect developing countries, or developed countries. High demand for people that are educated in the fields of computer science, nursing, and medicine in places like North America and Europe has led to efforts to attract foreign workers. While at the same time this increases the anger of those who are not benefiting from globalization, either the people who do not have the qualities desired by the immigration boards or the people in North America and Europe who feel that immigrants are taking jobs from Americans. This brain drain from places like Ethiopia, South Africa, India, and many other places affects these countries. They are losing their best and brightest, and therefore their economic growth can be put on hold. While anti-immigrant sentiment is not the same as racism, I believe they begin to look very similar when expressed through the filter of anger. Some Americans believe that Latino immigrants come to America illegally, take jobs from Americans, and use a welfare system they don't pay into. Some Americans also believe that a large proportion of these immigrants are criminals, and this anti-immigrant sentiment begins to coalesce into racist views against Latinos, particularly Mexicans. So in this sense, one of the major players in globalization, immigration, has an effect on racism in America. As we saw in the migrant farm workers' son and Zoot Suit riots, this resentment follows these immigrants persistently, regardless of whether or not they are law-abiding, pay taxes, work a full-time job, and these people are treated poorly for being of Latino heritage, and that is racism. And that's not to say that immigration is the cause of racism. Racism is a product of ignorance. If people were more aware of the facts behind immigration, I believe they would be less likely to treat Latino and other immigrants so poorly. I think the best first step America could take is to improve our education system. This would not just create a more informed public, it would also improve job and career prospects for Americans. If America could also improve its mortgage lending systems and slightly change the tax deduction rules for mortgage payments, this could give a boost to African American and Latino home ownership rates. Maybe if Americans were more widely educated in the desired fields, our country would seek fewer foreigners, and this might even help developing countries better get on their feet.